Before we start this week's episode, a word from our sponsor, MFG.com.
Are you an engineer or designer looking for reliable and skilled manufacturers to bring your designs to life? MFG.com, the world's largest online manufacturing marketplace, connects you with over 10,000 suppliers across the globe. Browse the directory or submit a request for quote and receive an average of 4 quotes from U.S. suppliers. MFG provides access to a wide range of manufacturing capabilities, including precision machining, injection molding, and 3D printing, so you can find the right supplier for your specific project needs. Signing up for MFG.com is quick and free and gives you the ability to manufacture your engineering designs efficiently and effectively. So why wait? Sign up for MFG.com today and take your engineering and design projects to the next level. Again, visit MFG.com to sign up today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Engineering Entrepreneur Podcast, episode 136. This is Scott Tursey, as always, the president of CADdesignhelp.com. Go ahead and head over to my website, CADdesignhelp.com. Sign up on the email list, and we'll send you a free PDF as a reward for doing that. And when you're on the list, of course, you'll get all the information about the podcast and other things going on. If you got any feedback for me, my email is info@CADdesignhelp.com. And send a review on iTunes if you're liking the show. So our guest this week is Aron Moncur, and he's the founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. And I believe we both know a past guest on my show, Raphael. I don't remember how to spell his last name. Testassi, Test something, I think, like that.
Testai,
yeah. I believe you work with him, right?
That's right, yeah.
Awesome. All right, Aron, well, I'm going to let you do most of the talking because you are the guest, but I guess let's start with how did you start your company? And I guess tell us more about what your company does as well.
Great, yeah. I started my company by being laid off from my old job, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Well, that sounds very familiar to my story. So.
Eerily familiar, yeah?
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened to me.
Yeah. It's a great way to start a business. I worked as an engineer for a company here in Arizona, and I did product development, R&D, engineering, largely on medical devices. And the recession came along 2008, 2009. And if I'm being completely candid, I was definitely not very engaged at that point in the work. And the owners there at the company were very intelligent people. They could tell I wasn't supremely engaged, which is a little odd because I had been when I started. I loved the job when I got started. But 3 years later, 3.5 years later, I just had kind of fallen out of love with it.
What happened? Let's hear more about that. Like, what happened there?
It took me a long time to realize what happened, actually. And it wasn't until several years after I had been laid off that I really put it all together. But what it boils down to is I realized that I guess the way to say this is that I was meant to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, not an employee. And to get a little bit more granular there, I don't do well when I'm micromanaged and when I'm expected to work on someone else's schedule. It was the same in school. I really did not enjoy school because I had to be in someone else's class at a time someone else prescribed, doing work that someone else told me I needed to do. And it wasn't for me. So the same thing began to occur. You know, my boss would say,
it's so funny that we're so similar because it's exactly the same with me. Like I never did well as an employee because if I thought of a better way to do it, they didn't like that, or a different way, or a more efficient way. They never liked any of these out of the box ways of thinking that I had. It was just like, do it our way, do what we tell you to do, work these hours, sit at this desk. And I'm like, sometimes I had nothing to do. I'm like, why am I sitting here? Like I could just be doing anything else. It would be irrelevant. Like I'd rather just not be even getting paid just to not be here because I'm not doing anything. And yeah, so I just can't go back. I've been on like job boards trying to find more work and stuff. And you know, I talk to recruiters like, well, we want you to sit in this office. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I won't.
It's hard. Oh,
like I won't do it. Like I don't mind going to have a meeting and doing some work, but like for you to have me sit there 40 hours a week, there's very few jobs that's necessary. A lot of times you got to go get the requirements, meet with the people, but then you go back and you can just do it whenever. it doesn't need to be done that minute. And so
right.
like I'll never do it again. But I'll let you go back to. I just wanted to interject there for a second.
Well, in their defense, so my employer's defense, it was a good job as far as jobs go. They were good people. I didn't feel like they stifled creativity or anything like that. What I learned about myself was that I don't enjoy being a cog in a machine, but when I can be the entire machine and take ownership over the entire process, that was a transformational epiphany that I had. And I thought that I didn't like engineering anymore. But really, I just didn't like the way I was doing engineering. And once I made that change and started working for myself, got to own the entire process, then I loved engineering again. And just like that, and it was odd because uh, at the end of my time at that company, when 40 hours hit, I was done, right? I was out of there. Sometimes it'd be Friday at 2:30 because I hit my 40 hours at 2:30 Friday afternoon. So peace, I'm out. And when I started working for myself, especially in the beginning, I'd be working 60, 70-hour weeks pretty regularly. And I loved it. I was not looking at the clock. The clock at that point was something other people looked at. It just wasn't even something I
Right.
noticed.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we have exact same story because like I probably work more hours now, but it feels like I work way less because
Totally. Yeah.
I'm super engaged with what I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
learning new things all the time. I've learned like about marketing because you run a business, I'm sure you've learned this too. It's like you can't just know engineering. You got to know everything, at
Yep.
least a little bit, so you can tell somebody else how to do it if
Yeah.
you don't want to do it yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, I work more hours, but it feels like I work way less.
100%. So that was my story of how I started the company. As far as what we do, we make custom manufacturing equipment. So test fixtures, automated assembly cells, inspection stations, that sort of thing. Everything's custom.
And why did you pick this niche? Because you're working in medical devices, it seems like it wouldn't make more sense for you to go into that field over custom manufacturing equipment.
Yeah, I didn't pick it, actually. It kind of picked me. When I started Pipeline, I was much more focused, in fact, entirely focused on product design. So it may have been a medical device. Maybe it was an iPhone case. Maybe it was some kind of solar power equipment, but it was like product design, product development. We didn't do any test fixtures or manufacturing equipment or anything like that. I think it was probably 2013, 2014, one of our medical device customers asked us if we could design a test fixture for them when previously we'd just been doing design work. And we'd never done a test fixture really, but we said, sure, how hard could it be? So we did that and they liked it. And they said, hey, we really need more of this kind of thing. Can you do more test fixture design? So we said, yeah, for sure. And ever since then, we've just kind of slowly rolled into this niche of fixture design and automation and manufacturing equipment. And it felt like a natural path for us. Once we started, we started getting more and more requests for that kind of work. So like I said, it kind of found us. And I think that's common in business, right? You might have an idea of what you want to do and you try it out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, you keep trying different things until you find something that does work. And then once you find the market fit, something the market's willing to pay you for, great, let's keep doing that.
Right, because at the end of the day, design is design. It's like, it doesn't really matter if you're doing medical devices or something else. Like it's kind of all the same. Like you're trying to make something work. You're trying to produce a physical product.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
So I mean, take the path of least resistance here. Like unless for some reason you just really, really want to design medical devices over anything else, it would just be easier to get work that's just kind of I don't want to say falling into your lap, but is being basically asked of you. Like, why would you turn it down?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so it seems like it just kind of grew organically for you. You didn't have to do a lot of Google ads or Facebook ads or any of these kind of things. It just started with one customer and it kind of spiraled from there.
That's right. Yeah, it's not been until the past year or two that we've done any marketing or formal sales at all. It was all organic.
So what happened the last year? I'm guessing it's out of necessity that you're doing it this past year.
Yeah, so I guess growth is what happened. We grew to a certain size. We're still small, like 20 people here, something like that. But at a certain point, it becomes really important. You just need to feed that beast. And uh, in the beginning, we had a few large customers that would just feed us work continuously, and that was great. It worked for a long time, but eventually they go away. They develop their own internal design team, and we need to replace that work. So that's what happened the past couple of years. We've grown to a size where we got a lot of mouths to feed now, and we just needed to find more effective methods of generating new business.
So have you found paid advertising to work well for you?
No, we have not found it to work well at all. We've
Interesting.
done some LinkedIn ads, and we've seen a lot of clicks, but not a lot of buys. So we're still trying to figure out the marketing aspect. I think it's a tough nut to crack, which is cool because I like solving hard problems, and this has been a hard problem I'm still working on.
So have you taken like courses or classes on SEO and online ads to do this, or have you hired someone else to do this for you?
A little bit of both. Mostly I look for people who already are experts at doing these things, and then I engage with them. So we've got a fractional CMO right now, wonderful guy, Vince, who used to run his own marketing agency for 20 years, and he's helping us out. We've got another contractor, Jenna, shout out to Jenna, who has been in the marketing space for quite a while, and she's managing, we have a podcast of our own, and just the LinkedIn ads, she'll manage those. So there are a couple people externally that I've pulled in, and we've kind of formed a group here within Pipeline to support those efforts.
Because I get constant emails from these guys, these marketing guys, and it's like I hired one of them once. He didn't really improve anything, and I looked at what he did, and I taught myself this stuff, and I'm like, in 30 minutes, I feel like I knew more than this guy. He messed up so many things. So how do you know that these people that you hired, can really know what they're doing? Or I guess you're taking their word on it and see what happens, right?
I think there's no silver bullet for that. I've definitely hired people, contractors, not necessarily for marketing, but engineering contractors who did not produce much value, right? And it sucks. You end up paying a bunch of money for hardly any value, but sometimes you have to go through that to find the gems. One thing that has been helpful, not 100% of the time, but it's much higher success rate, is instead of, because I get those emails all the time, right? Same ones you get, pitching new websites or fractional CFOs or whatever they're pitching, help with HR. And I never respond to those. When I need someone, I'll look for a referral, right? Who do I know who knows someone else? And that way there's at least kind of a warm introduction, and I can ask about their work. I can ask someone I know about their work and get an honest response as opposed to whatever marketing garbage I get in my inbox.
So given that that's how you hire, why wouldn't you try to get referrals in terms of you getting business for the same exact reason, right? So if you're doing all these ads, it's almost the same thing as these guys sending you emails. It'd be better for you to get referrals from your past customers, in my mind.
Oh, for sure. Our referrals are our biggest source of new business.
But you're trying to expand even beyond that. So that's why you're willing to spend the money on the ads, because the referrals is a limited input, I'm assuming.
That's right. Yep, you got it.
Okay. So how long, you have a certain number, I'm assuming, that you'll spend on these ads, and if you don't return an ROI, you'll just kind of stop doing them at that point? Or are you just going to keep throwing money at it indefinitely, assuming that it'll eventually improve?
It's a hard question to answer, right? We've probably spent not an enormous amount of money, but many thousands of dollars on LinkedIn ads and effectively seen zero return for it. So I don't know. I'd say that I'm going to stop altogether, but we're definitely reevaluating the strategy. What we're starting to do now is what I like to think of as a more consultative approach to marketing. Instead of, look at us, look at what we can do, hire us, which feels kind of needy, right? We're starting to do something a little different where we're taking an engineering problem that we think probably a lot of people, or at least a minimum viable number of people out there, would find value in seeing a solution to. And we're solving that problem, we're documenting it, and then we're going to release a marketing piece explaining the process. This is how you do this problem, and just put it out there, mostly to create visibility and credibility with our market. And I don't know yet, because this is an experiment, so we'll see how it works out. But I feel like for me, if I was on the other end, I'm much more likely to engage with a post or an article that teaches me something I really want to know, something relevant to the work that I do, than I am, your standard piece of, just a little graphic image out there, pipeline, we do fixtures, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you might be onto something here. I'm going to fill you in on what I mean. So a lot of the work I've gotten, and I should probably just do more of this today, is exactly like that. It's basically writing content. A website I use all the time is called Cura.com. So people will ask engineering questions in there. How does this work? How does that work? Somebody asked one time, I mean, this is a true story, and I've probably gotten 5 jobs like this from this one article. They said, how do you build sunglasses or create prototype of sunglasses? Well, I had actually been hired for this once, I believe. So I took that project and showed all the steps of how I sketched it out, how I drew it in SolidWorks, how I 3D printed it, how I tested it, how I refined it, like this step by step, like pictures, everything. It's by far, it was like all the answers that were given. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but it was by far the best one. Well, guess what happened? Like I hired like 5 more times to do sunglasses.
That's interesting. Huh.
So
yeah.
like very popular things that people want, sunglasses, phone cases. Like I've probably done like 5 of those. It takes a long time to write it, but whatever I value my time at, given what you just told me about, because I haven't done a lot of paid ads. I've done a little bit, but not thousands. And the fact that you spent thousands got nothing. Well, I can tell you I spent less than $1,000 of my time. I spent hundreds, but not thousands of dollars of my time to write these articles, but it's reduced massive ROI. Now, the problem with this approach, obviously, it's like it might work, it might not. Now, it has worked sometimes, it doesn't work every time. But given all the things I've heard, all the, like from you with the paid ads, all the things I've done personally, that's probably what's resulted in the most amount of return on money / time, depending on, how you translate one to the other.
I think there's this interesting paradox where you almost, I think, right, I'm still learning here, but I think you have to give value away before you get value back, right? We were just spending money on ads. There's no value in that for anyone, really. And now we're doing this more consultative approach where we're legitimately giving away solutions. These are legitimate engineering solutions that other companies, other engineering teams can use and incorporate into their work. And the hope is that we generate visibility and credibility by doing that, and it comes back to us in the form of new business at some point. Yeah,
and this is definitely a long game approach. It's not like if you write it today, you're going to get hired tomorrow. Although that did actually happen once. I can't remember what article I wrote, but it was like literally the next day. I was like, hey, I read this. I was like, wow, that's quick. But normally, no, it's more of a long-term thing. I mean, I can get people asking about something I wrote like 5 years ago. And so, yeah, I do think it's a good way to do it, but it's also like, you gotta be patient on this approach. But yeah, I mean, it's consultative approach. I find that like what I'll do is I'll join like inventor Facebook groups and just, respond to people there, give my expertise. Like a lot of this kind of stuff can also result in, getting people talking to you and possibly hiring you.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Well, what else do you want to talk about? We got more time here.
Let's see. What are some of the topics that your listeners find interesting? What are some of your most popular episodes? What were the topics there?
I feel like the inventor episodes are really popular. Like people that brought a product to market. I mean, do you guys have any of your own things that you've created that you sell or that you've licensed or anything like that?
We just started doing that. I can talk a little bit about the ideology, I guess, behind a product to date. So we've been in business about 14 years now, and we've always been strictly an engineering services company. We sell hours for money. That's it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I felt like this is not a good business model. I mean, it's gotten us to where we are, right? So like it works enough, but no one's going to get rich here. We're doing this work because we love engineering work and not because it's paying goo bucks. So I have been trying to get us into products, our own products that we've developed for several years. And it's always been a struggle because when things are a little slow, we have some time to work on our own products. But as soon as a paid project comes in, man, we have to jump on it, right? Like that's just always been the paradigm, whether I like it or not. When a customer
This
project
is
comes
another.
in,
It's crazy. I think we might be like weirdly twins or something, because this is exactly what I did. Like I when I got slow, like I don't know, like when I first started, like it was like a bunch of work and then nothing, and basically, not that I would interrupt you, I want to just interject here that I had all these 3D printers, and so like I just use those to make the end products I sell online, and it's been a really nice like extra 30% per year I'm
nice.
making just from these things I create. You know, I don't have to go to tooling, because the thing is, like almost everything I've ever made, the volume I've sold is so low, I could never justify the molding. There's just no
Yeah.
way. Like I never would have paid it back, except for maybe a couple things, but they were not even moldable shapes actually, just by chance. So yeah, that's kind of like what I did. So it sounds like you're starting to take that approach now.
Yeah. So over the past year or so, we have finally been disciplined enough, or maybe just had enough people where we could dedicate a few resources to focusing on our own products. And so we've finished one. It's officially available for sale. It's a threaded insert installer, and there are DIY versions out there of this, and there are also very industrial versions with lots of bells and whistles. And this one is positioned kind of in the middle of those. It's not a cheap DIY thing, but it's not $5,000 either. And it's for installing these heat set threaded inserts into either 3D printed or other plastic parts. And it does so very, very repeatably, because the problem with soldering irons, which is what everyone uses, is it never goes in perfectly straight, right? Because you're hand holding this thing and maybe it goes in too deep or not deep enough. So this tool that we created goes in perfectly straight every time to the exact correct depth every time. So that one's out there.
I've never heard of this problem, but it makes sense because you're in the fixture space. It sounds like this is something that's used in fixtures common, I'm assuming.
It's certainly used a lot in fixtures, but it's used in a lot of, anytime you 3D print a plastic part and you want threads in it, that's a problem, right? Because 3D printed parts are generally pretty weak.
So you're talking about like
threads.
one of these these little brass
the heat set threaded inserts. Yeah, you apply heat to a brass insert and you push it in a plastic and it melts the plastic.
I just always made it like a 1/4 mm large pocket and just glued it in. I didn't know people actually like heated it up to put. That's weird.
Oh yeah, you should check those out. They're really useful and a lot easier than using glue.
Why? Well, I mean, I'll be honest. I never thought glue was hard. You just put a little super glue in there, push it down in it. That thing's never coming out. So what's the advantage of this heat set insert over just gluing it in?
I've never glued one in, so I can't say what the advantage is, but I've actually never seen anyone do that, glue it in place.
That's crazy. So we have two different approaches to the same problem, and we've never once either one of us heard of the other solution to the problem.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's why we do these podcasts, because we learn new things like that. That's really great. Okay, so that makes sense, because I was going to ask how you came up with the idea, but yeah, you were doing this some other way of heating something. I can see, because if you're using a soldering iron to heat up this thing, like it's not going to hit evenly. It's going to be a mess to like try to get the thing. I mean, I guess you can't really microwave it. I don't know how people normally put it in the oven. Maybe.
No, that's what people do. They use a soldering iron and just push it in. It's like that's how people get these things in there, and it kind of works, but it's never perfectly straight. Anyway, I won't go into too much detail about that product, but that's the first one that we've launched. We're working on another one right now called Easy PLC, which is a pretty cool method for programming motion that requires no programming skills at all. You don't have to write a line of code. It uses a Google product called Blockly, which is a visual programming language. Even to call it a programming language is a bit of a stretch. It's all just visual drag and drop little blocks where you can select different logic pieces.
It's called Blockly, like block plus ly at the end.
That's right. It might be LEY.
Okay.
I can't remember, but yeah, it's
Okay.
a Google product. Pretty neat, and we've applied it to communicate with the PLC. So it generates the PLC code, and the user just has to work with this super easy visual interface. And you can use it to program air cylinders and motors. We're incorporating analog, so sensors and things like that as well. That one's still in development. And then we have a few other ideas that we're working on. But some of the I guess insights I've had about products versus services, there are two really. One is that people are really hard to scale, especially good people like you need to do engineering services. You cannot do engineering services as a business if you're working with engineers that aren't very good. It just doesn't work. There's not enough margin there. The efficiency will never be where you need it to be. So you have to have good engineers to do this work well. And that's hard to scale, right? Finding good engineers, and people leave on occasion, right? So that's the second thing, is that a product doesn't leave. Once you develop a product, it's there forever. People leave. That's part of life. It's going to happen. And products don't. So products much easier to scale because you just turn on a manufacturer and then products don't leave.
Right, absolutely. I mean, trading time for money is never something that you really want to do. And I mean, that's kind of the whole point. Like, I don't physically do all the CAD work in my company either. Like, I have contractors and people I use to get it done, because otherwise I'm just trading my time for money again, and I might as well just go take a job somewhere because it's no different. And so, yeah, but a product is great because it's so passive, right? I'm always looking like, how can I make passive income? And once you've created it, you just let it sell and it does its thing. Like, it's very minimal after that point.
Yeah.
So do you have other businesses that you're running, or are you just kind of focusing on pipeline and basically design services and products?
That's the focus right now. There's something called the Wave in the background that we are also working on. And the Wave I could see turning into its own separate business. The idea behind the Wave is the mission is to accelerate the speed of engineering, right? I had lunch with who is now our director of engineering here at Pipeline several years ago. And we'd always share ideas back and forth, different business ideas, engineering related usually. And we were talking, and he says, what you really need to figure out how to do is make product development less expensive, because it's really expensive, right? You're paying highly trained, highly educated people by the hour to invent stuff, to do R&D. And I thought, that's a great idea, but there's no way to do that. Like, how can you just flip a switch and make product development less expensive? You can't do it. So I kind of blocked it out of my mind for a long time. Well, fast forward many years, and we send out quotes, and sometimes customers say, no, too expensive, we're not going to do it. So this had happened one too many times in a particular month, a couple of years ago, year and a half, maybe, something like that. And I said, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I started brainstorming a little bit, and I came up with this idea that I called design accelerators. And in the software world, design accelerators, although they're not called that, already exist. In the software world, it's called low code, no code, where there are these pre-built blocks of code that you can kind of drag and drop into your program and integrate to create a larger piece of software. And there's definitely some customizations in there and some integration efforts that go into it. But low code, no code is a pretty popular trend and has been for several years in the software industry. Well, I thought, why can't there be something like that for CAD? There's GrabCAD, right? But like, no one really uses GrabCAD for anything production related. It's largely stuff that maybe students have created, kind of looks like, but it's not designed for manufacturability. When you start looking at it in detail, you see that the details just aren't there. So we've started doing this actually. We have 18 of these design accelerators now, and you can download all of them for free on our website. Ultimately, I want them to live on a different site altogether that's going to be called the Wave, and will include some other tools to accelerate the speed of engineering. Quick example of one of these design accelerators. We do a lot of fixtures, and every time there's a fixture, you need a way to hold a device, right? Whatever it is you're working on, assembling something, inspecting something, validating something. And so we designed these device holders, and it'd take, a day or two maybe, or even less to design these things. They're all custom because they're all holding custom shapes, custom handles, custom devices. Well, we created a design accelerator that has most of the elements of these device holders, but is very modular, so it can easily be changed to like different. Maybe you want to mount it with quarter turn fasteners instead of screws, or maybe you want to orient this thing upright instead of horizontal. And then the only change that you really need to make to this is the nest geometry that actually cradles the contour of your device. So now, instead of spending a day or more to create a device holder from scratch, we start with this design accelerator. And I literally did one in 30 minutes the other day. And so it just accelerates, right? It's this low code, no code stuff. You drag it in, make a few changes, and you're done. So I think that could be a really cool idea and something useful for the industry. And that's part of this idea of the Wave that we're working on in the background.
Very cool. Yeah. It definitely sounds like that's a useful thing. And I was going to get into asking about artificial intelligence and how you think that, because to me, it seems like, honestly, it feels like a threat to job security to some degree, because I feel like with the way things are going, it's like you can just say, hey, chatbot GTP or whatever it is, draw me a whatever, and it'll just like do it. And maybe it won't be perfect, and it certainly won't be perfect at first, but it'll be like so easy to finish it from there that like no one's gonna hire me anymore, because they're gonna be like, it's like 5 extra minutes of work. I'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, or and on the flip side, it's like, hey, how can I use that to my advantage as a designer to be like because I want to look into. I've used it a little bit in the Chat GPT thing just for like articles and stuff. But like, how can I use that and be like a first mover on this technology?
Well, I'll tell you where I would like to see it applied, and we don't have the resources or capability to do this in-house, but most engineers don't love doing drawings, right? Manufacturing drawings. And if AI could produce drawings from the 3D models that we have, that would be a no-brainer for us. We'd buy that in an instant.
I've actually saw this somewhere on social media not long ago, that this is already a thing. I don't know how well it works, but I saw it being done. I was like, or no, it was the other way around. It was like, and actually, I don't really mind these jobs. But like, imagine somebody's got these really old blueprints from like the 50s or 60s where there was no 3D model.
Yeah.
It was the AI was to reverse that, or whatever. You got your hands on this drawing from some company, you want to duplicate their product, instead of hiring somebody to go do it, like from that, like the AI, you just scan it with your phone or something, and it just builds the model. It looked too good to be true on the video, but I was like, well, if it works that way, it has to work the other way around. It would be easier to have the 3D model and create. I mean, it's really not that, like, I mean, you use SolidWorks. It's not even like that hard to do right now, because it's just sort of a laborious task to like add dimensions, but like all the views are automatic like that.
Yeah.
That already exists. So I don't know. I mean, that's something I saw the other day.
That's cool. I haven't seen that yet, but yeah, I as far as job security, it doesn't seem like there is any imminent risk in the next couple of years, but maybe 10 years from now, I could see that being a threat. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, I don't have a lot much else. If you're good, I guess we'll get towards wrapping up. Second to last question. What's your number one tip?
My number one tip: be nice to people. Everything we do, business, personal, it's all about relationships with other people. And I heard the term kindergarten skills from the CEO of this software company, Menlo Innovations, Rich Sheridan. I've stolen the term. I love it. Have good kindergarten skills, share, say thank you, say please, say hello, just be nice to people. That's my number one tip.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even hard to do, people. So take that advice to heart. All right, and lastly, contact info if you want to contact with you or your team.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Aron Moncur, 2 A's, RON, MONCUR. And check out our podcast for sure. Being an Engineer podcast is on all the major platforms.
Oh, we should talk a little bit about the podcast. So we'll be a little bit out of order on this show. Tell me about the podcast real quick before we finish up, because I forgot that you had one, and I want to hear about maybe how you started, inspiration, maybe some of your top guests.
It started in COVID. It was April, I think, 2020. And I was part of this business coaching group. And our mentor posed this question to us. He said, what if COVID decimates your business? What if you have to close shop? What would you do next? And I thought, oh, that's such an interesting question. So I spent some time thinking about it and asking myself, what is it I really like to do? And I thought, I like learning new things. I like talking to interesting people. I don't love going to like big parties and groups where I don't know people. That's terrible. I hate that. But talking with small groups of people who have something interesting to say, I like that a lot. I like writing a little bit. I don't mind some public speaking. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I could be an author, write a book or something. But then I was like, nah, that's so far away from engineering and what I'm doing right now. And then I had this idea, well, what about a podcast? I could do an engineering podcast. And I thought, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And then I very quickly realized, well, I don't need to wait for the company to go out of business to start that. So I started it right away. And so it's been a little over 3 years now. And again, it's called Being an Engineer podcast. And we talk about engineering, but we don't get into the real technical details so much. Mostly we talk about the soft skills of engineering, I guess you could say. And we get into technical skills a little bit as well. But, how to navigate corporate culture, which is something I know very little about. Thankfully, I've never been in much of a corporate culture. The skills that the best engineers out there have, things like that. This is what we talk about, time management, stuff like that.
You probably heard of this podcast. Yours sounds very similar to the Engineering Career Coach podcast. Have you ever heard of that show?
Is that two software engineers who receive questions from?
This guy Anthony Pisano, I think, was like a structural engineer.
Yeah. Anthony I was on our podcast actually.
Yeah, I've been on his show. I'm guessing you probably been on his show or will be at some point.
Yeah.
It sounds like your show's similar to his. His talks a lot about like more of your corporate like type of jobs, like type of engineers, and like the kind of things you can do in that situation.
Yeah, I think ours are a little bit different. Ours definitely is not corporate. I ask people like, what are some of the most fulfilling projects that you ever worked on? What are some big fails that you've had, and what have you learned from them? So again, it's engineering for sure, but it's not like the super technical details. I'm not asking anyone to like recite the Laplace transforms or anything like that.
Yeah, I couldn't do that at this point. I'd have to Google it. I have to Google everything. Like my memory sucks, but that's why Google's there. You don't need to remember it. You just need to recall what you learned before, and then you're like, oh yeah, I remember how to do that.
That's right. School was good for teaching me that these things exist, and now I just go and Google when I need to figure out how to actually use them.
Cool. Well, I would love to come on your show sometime. I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yep.
I definitely got some stories of all kinds of crazy projects. Doing what I do now, like I've worked in like every field imaginable and created some crazy things you couldn't even believe. So whenever we get that set up, I'll bring up some, because I got to go back and try to remember these projects. But like I've said, some of this stuff is so crazy. But very cool. Yeah, building a podcast is interesting. Have you found it beneficial on the business side, or is it more been just kind of something you enjoy doing?
Both. Yeah, it's definitely been advantageous for both. It's interesting, you call someone that you might want to do business with, and say, hey, can I show you what we do? And usually no, right? They don't even answer the phone. But if you email someone and say, hey, we've got this podcast and legitimately, I think you'd be a great guest. Do you mind being on the show? And then they'll talk to you for an hour and like really kind of get to know you. So we've definitely had a lot of business generated through people I've met on the podcast, and it's just been personally fulfilling for me. And we get a lot of feedback from people saying that they really appreciate the content. So it's been all around just a big win for everyone.
Yeah, it's very similar to what you talked about earlier with these articles you're writing. It's like when somebody feels like something's trying to be sold to them, they're very defensive. But if it's just like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to talk and market yourself, they feel totally different about it. And
yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right, cool. Well, now we've hit every topic. When you said the podcast, I definitely want to touch on that. Because we have that in common. All right, cool.
Perfect.
Well, thanks so much for your time. It was a great talk. We'll catch everyone next time on the podcast.